Welcome to Top Stuff. Everyone wanted to dress up as Scorpion and Sub-Zero as a kid, but these Mortal Kombat combatants are so lame we just want to forget they even exist. When we think of Mortal Kombat characters, we want badass warriors, brutal monsters, or cool costumes that every kid in the neighborhood wants to wear on Halloween. Suffice it to say, no one we're talking about today will be checking those boxes. These are the characters that rarely get any play when you're fighting it out with your buddies, or the ones you'll be laughed at for picking. Someone needs to deliver a fatality to these warriors, because this is Mortal Kombat, top 10 worst characters ever. Number 10. Dagon. So much of what was said about Tabin can also be said about his brother Dagon. He was another original character whose role could already have been filled by pre-existing, and better, characters. He basically had the same exact story motivating him as Tabin, except he was evil. Both brothers were groomed to face and compete against Blaze, but of course only one could do so. And because of manipulation from characters like Shinnok, Dagon's ambitions for facing Blaze dark-sided, and he even attempted to kill his own parents. Dagon was essentially the main antagonist of Armageddon's story mode, but he couldn't measure up to his predecessors. Shao Kahn, Shang Tsung, Onaga, and even Shinnok were all more interesting and powerful. Dagon just came across as stupid for being easily manipulated, and he was another bland character who left fans feeling relieved when he got erased from the franchise's history.
Dagon wins.
Number 9. Chameleon. Any fan of Mortal Kombat knows this series went overboard with the ninjas by the time Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 came around. And then Mortal Kombat Trilogy threw in a few more ninjas just for good measure. It was just ridiculous, and wound up giving us such unnecessary characters as Chameleon. There was already a character named Chameleon, a male ninja whose fighting style consisted of copying the abilities of the many other male ninjas in the game. But then there was a female variant named Chameleon, who copied all the female ninjas in the game. Chameleon wasn't much better. With his reliance on the same stupid gimmick, and he could arguably deserve a place in this list too, but at least he had variety to choose from for his moves. Number 8. Blaze. The only end boss that makes this list was from Armageddon, which isn't surprising since that was probably the worst Mortal Kombat game period. Even Mythologies, at least introduced memorable characters like Quan Chi. But Blaze? He debuted as a background character in Mortal Kombat 2, nothing more than a little fun visual for one of the stages. But due to fan interest, he was made into a playable character in Deadly Alliance. In that first playable experience he honestly was fine, but forgettable. Then Armageddon tried to make him the most powerful character in the franchise. Armageddon was never going to be salvageable regardless of the last boss, but Blaze was just boring. For one thing, he was easily the least difficult final boss in any of the games. Shang Tsung, Shao Kahn, and even Onaga would all kick your ass the first time you fought them. Blaze didn't live up to his reputation at all. And the whole reason characters even cared about Blaze was because when they beat him it granted them supreme power. So even in the story Blaze mattered more as a plot device than a fearsome villain. Number 7. Reiko. Although it may not have been the original intention, Rikio is another victim of being a new generation character in Mortal Kombat 4. And unfortunately for Reiko, the character he seemingly is trying to replace also happens to be the most popular villain in the franchise, Shao Kahn. Those are some huge shoes to fill, and a task that someone like Reiko definitely is not up to. Reiko's Mortal Kombat 4 ending sees him entering Shao Kahn's throne room and putting on the Emperor's signature skull helmet. Fans rejected Reiko as a successor for Kahn, so he was reconned into being more of an ambitious character who was in over his head, like Starscream is to Megatron in Transformers. Subsequent games adamantly shut down the idea that there were any plans of Reiko taking control, with Shao Kahn even chastising Reiko for trying on his helmet when he's not around, as if Reiko was a disobedient child. And that's where Reiko stands now, more of a wannabe than a power player to look out for. Number 6. Jarek. Jarek performs his fatality in Mortal Kombat 4. Something the franchise has still attempted with its most recent entry, Mortal Kombat X, is creating a new generation of characters to replace familiar faces. MKX has some misses, but it also has some hits, like Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade's daughter Cassie Cage. Cassie is a fun mix of the two personalities who also shows her own style with perhaps the best fatality of the entire game, where she takes a selfie with the bloodied corpse of her opponent and uploads it to social media. Unfortunately, not every new generation character can be quite as fun, which resulted in Mortal Kombat 4's Jarek. Jarek was a subordinate of Kano who was left on the run from Special Forces members after Kano's apparent defeat. But Kano's gang of criminals were never that interesting in the first place, so trying to mine some more nuggets of story from that avenue was already a weak move. Jarek lacked anything distinctive about him like Kano's famous glowing eye. But the icing on the cake was Jarek's infamous ending scene in MK4, which features some atrocious voice acting and one of the most unintentionally funny deaths of the franchise. Not a good legacy for a character looking to be taken seriously. Number 5. Meat. Mortal Kombat Gold, the secret character Meat. For a while the Mortal Kombat games were pretty good at getting fans excited about rumored characters. The first game had fans scrambling to try and figure out how to fight Reptile. The second game introduced Jade, Smoke, and Noob Saibot to get fans talking. It's only natural Midway would want to repeat that formula, but Mortal Kombat 4 might have ruined a fun idea instead. In what would become one of the most lackluster surprises in the franchise, MK4 gave players Meat. People swapped stories talking about the skinless warrior before he ever even really existed. Much like they did with Ermac, Midway took a rumor and made it an actual character. The difference here was that Meat didn't have much going for him beyond the visual gag. The character idea might have sounded cool back when the series was shocking people with its violence, but by MK4 a bloody skeleton was nothing. This was a case where there just wasn't enough meat on the bones. Number 4. Motaro, in Armageddon. We're not talking about the original Motaro because he was actually pretty cool. He had an original intimidation factor, what with his huge body that took up so much of the arena, and his ability to teleport across the screen. He's actually someone we'd like to see return to the franchise. It'll likely never happen though, since Motaro's huge body also makes him extremely difficult for other characters to interact with properly. So apparently one day Midway tried to solve that problem by giving us the Motaro of Armageddon. Armageddon's Motaro is just a joke. They made him look totally stupid by chopping off his hind legs so he could fight like the rest of the two-legged fighters. The explanation given in the story was that he had been cursed by being transformed into a minotaur. But it was obviously just an excuse to give him a character model that wouldn't screw up the fighting system. This solution just didn't work though. Taking away Motaro being a centaur would be like taking away Sub-Zero's ice powers. Number 3. Stryker. Mortal Kombat 3 was where the series hit its first snag with fans. It introduced mechanics, like actual combos and the ability to run, that really changed the pace of the game. It omitted longtime favorite characters like Scorpion. And it also introduced some of the first playable characters that just were not cool in any way. The worst of the bunch, and one of the worst of the franchise, was definitely the cop known as Stryker. Nothing about Stryker looks intimidating, especially in his MK3 attire, which includes a backwards ball cap. And in a series popular for featuring fighting ninjas and monks, a cop doesn't exactly fit the theme. At least Sonya had a personality, and Jax had metal arms. Stryker just looked lost. Even his revamp in Mortal Kombat 9 couldn't do much to salvage him. He actually looked like a cop in the sequel. And that's about all the good that can be said for him. Stryker is the epitome of boring characters. Number 2. HS Yu Hao. Just from looking at this guy you can already tell he's a dud. That's not just an opinion we have either. Even his creators have said he sucks, with Ed Boon specifically naming Xiu Hao as one of his most disliked characters in the entire franchise. In fact, the Mortal Kombat team has named him as one of the characters that they have no intention of ever bringing back, and they were even irritated when they realized they had to bring him back in Armageddon since every character was in that game. Yeesh, talk about being unpopular. So what makes Xiu Hao so bad? Well, just look at his outfit. He looks like he should be in an 80s cartoon where he antagonizes talking animals while twirling his little mustache. His personality doesn't even defy his cliché appearance. He's just as treacherous as he looks. And then he rips off Kano's I-beam, except in an extremely stupid way. Like a Mortal Kombat version of Iron Man, that giant glowing core in his chest is essentially his heart. And it shoots lasers, as hearts often do. This is a character we're definitely glad to see gone from the franchise. Number 1. Mocap. We can't give a definitive ranking on how bad the rest of these characters were, but if we tried, Mocap is the guy who would claim the top spot for sure. Developers putting a joke into their game is pretty commonplace, but at least the joke should be funny. Who laughed when they were unlocking characters in Deadly Alliance and wound up getting Mocap? The toasty guy was an amusing Easter egg. Mocap is just a wasted character slot. For those who don't know, Mocap's name is derived from the fact that Deadly Alliance had a motion capture performer for all the characters. It was becoming a pretty common practice at the time, but apparently the Mortal Kombat team found the technology particularly amusing. So the developers thought it would be funny to commemorate the performer by making him a fighter in the actual game. Because what player doesn't want to play the awesome character of the motion capture guy? Thank you for watching it till the last. We hope you enjoyed our video. Please do like and subscribe to our channel to support us.